Morning learners. Today our focus is on addition and subtraction. We're going to do a little bit of revision again. I know this week has been revision, but next week we start equations. Okay, so today is Friday and you will be listening to this video. It should be a Friday if you're on par with the work schedule. I'm going to do 3 different types of questions with you as examples, and then I have an exercise for you to do. Okay, so today's lesson is quite short. Let's look at example 1. Now before we get to example 1, I've put down a few points for you to remember. When dealing with addition and subtraction, remember, write your whole numbers in fraction form. It's easier because this reminds you that you have a denominator of 1. Second point to remember, if you have a mixed number, a mixed fraction, convert them to an improper fraction. It's easier to work with. Third step, you find your LCD, and by finding the LCD, technically you are converting the fractions, you are making them equivalent fractions by finding your LCD. And always remember, is the thing that learners forget is to carry the LCD down to the end. In a simplification of an expression question, you have to carry your denominator to the end. Okay, so let's look at example 1. This m next to the fraction looks a bit out of place there. So my advice to you is to change it, to rewrite it. Remember, 2 over 5m simply means 2 over 5 times m over 1. Okay? And dealing with fractions, you go numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So the m, in theory, belongs to the numerator. So rewrite, if it's in that form, when adding and subtracting. In fact, whenever you deal with fractions, change it to this form. So y, there's the explanation here, minus m divided by 10. Now doesn't that look simpler? Now let's look at it. 5 and 10, different denominators, means bring them together by finding the same denominator. And finding the same denominator means rewriting them as equivalent fractions. So how can I get 5 to 10? As you learned in primary school, what you do to the bottom, you've got to do to the top. So from 5 to get to 10, you need to multiply it by 2. Correct? So you've got to multiply that by 2. So I'm going to write that step out here, and I encourage you to do this, please, grade 9s, because you get to algebraic expressions and you get to complex questions where you can't work it out mentally. You've got to show the step, and method marks are awarded for the step. So technically you are multiplying the numerator by 2 because you've multiplied the 5 by 2 to get to 10. Minus that 10 to get there, it's 1. So you're multiplying it by 1. So that doesn't change. And now you just work it out using your product laws. There are 2 terms there. So 2 times 2m is 4m minus m divided by 10. If you can simplify further, you will. And in this case, you can, because they are like terms. 4m minus m is 3m divided by 10. And that's your answer. And you leave it as that. Okay. So that's a basic example that I did to revise. Let's work through example 2. I said at the beginning, I gave you a point. If you have whole numbers, rewrite them as fractions, meaning you write down the denominator of 1 because 2 divided by 1 is 2. It reminds you that you have a denominator here and you've got to change this denominator to become an equivalent fraction. As I said, learners forget about it and they carry 2 instead of the correct denominator. Plus 2x plus 3 divided by 2. But common denominator is 2. So that 1 to get there, you need to multiply it by 2. So you're doubling the numerator. In this case, the 2 to get to the 1, you're multiplying by 1. So there's no change there because the denominator is the same as the LCD. 2 times 2 is 4 plus 2x plus 3 divided by 2. If they are like terms, you add, so that's 4 plus 3 is 7 plus the 2x divided by 2. There we go. So don't forget to add like terms. Right, grade 9s. Once again, let me remind you that I will put all of these notes up for you, so don't worry about copying the examples down. Moving on to example 3. Now this one looks a bit tricky. Now if you think about the first term, remember in the first example I told you if you have a fraction written like this, move the x minus 1 or whatever value is next to the fraction to the numerator, because it means, why do I have to do that? Let's explain this concept. This means times. And that's what you're actually working with. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. So technically, that goes to the top. It's easier to work with a fraction written in this form as opposed to that. That confuses learners because they're unsure where does the x minus 1 go. The x minus 1 goes to the numerator because of this reason here. So let's rewrite it, and you don't have to put the bracket. You can if you want to, you don't have to. X minus 1 divided by 6. Watch this negative here. And that is, the second fraction is x minus 2 over 8. Next step, find a common denominator. So we're going to convert them to equivalent fractions. What is common between 6 and 8? The lowest common value. That would be 12, no. 16, no. 24. 6 goes into 24, 8 goes into 24. So 24 has to be the common denominator here. Okay. Now from 6 to get to 24, we would have multiplied by 4. Correct? So you can do that there if you want. So you remember. And the 8 to get to 24, you would have multiplied it by 3. Hence, we got to the common denominator. So if you multiply the 6 to get to the 24, I've got to multiply the numerator by 4. And that is why I said to you, show this step, because you can't do this mentally. You can, but you're prone to make a mistake. So we allocate marks here for method and accuracy. So you are taking the numerator, which is a binomial, and you're multiplying it by the 4. Minus. Put that minus sign down. Please watch this negative distribution. If I multiplied 8 by 3, I need to distribute 8 or multiply the numerator by 3 as well. Because remember, what you do to the denominator, you've got to do to the numerator. So there's the 3 multiplication that you have there. From the 8, you got to 24. So x minus 2 must be multiplied to the 3. And now you may understand why I asked you to write this out. So that becomes an algebraic expression now. There's 2 terms. You've got to distribute the 4 into the first bracket, and you've got to distribute the minus 3 into the second bracket. Remember, it's minus 3. If you don't write it out like this, you can very easily make a mistake and forget about the negative sign that needs to be distributed. So please, I encourage you to show this step. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times minus 1 is minus 4. Minus 3 times x is minus 3x. Minus 3 times minus 2 is positive 6. Divided by 24. So 4x minus 3x is x. Minus 4 plus 6 is plus 2. All divided by 24. Right, grade 9s. That's enough of me for now. There are 4 questions that follow the examples that I've done now. Example 1, example 2, and example 3. So for the rest of this hour, you are expected to do these 4 questions. And if you are done before the hour is over, that's fine. If you are not done, then you would obviously have to carry it over as homework. And then I will put the answers on Google Classroom for you so you have time to mark it. And over the weekend, you can look at it. And then on Monday, we will start with the next section, which is equations. As I said at the beginning, the first week is revision of factorization and fractions, and then equations is the next section. Okay, have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Bye-bye.